Welcome to the podcast, the Human Experience Podcast, where we explore the depths of spirituality and our own personal journeys and experiences. I'm Dr. Carlos Garcia.
And I'm Supna Doshi. In this space, we'll reflect on the wisdom of some of the most profound spiritual teachers, from Eckhart Tolle to Ram Dass, Wayne Dyer, Michael Singer. Together, we'll dive into their teachings and share our own insights that have guided us on our own paths of self-discovery.
Each episode will feature inspiring clips from these masters, weaving them into our own reflections and conversations on how spirituality has enriched our daily lives, deepened our understanding of ourselves, and led us to a more meaningful experience.
So, take a deep breath, open your heart, and join us on this journey of exploration. Welcome to the podcast, the Human Experience Podcast.
Talking with a client yesterday who is going to be going, like they're having a family sort of retreat soon, right? And just, hey, can we use this session for me to prepare,
Yes.
mentally, right? Like almost like, can you coach me through all the things that may come up? And part of it for her really was like, has had a very distant relationship with her brother for most of her life. And just a lot of layers there. But essentially what she got to is like, there's a part of me that does want to have a better relationship with him. And then there's another part of me that's just deeply sort of wounded by, some of the things he's done in the past. And another part of me acknowledges that like, I may need to let some of that go in order to sort of open the door to something new. Right? Maybe he's not the same person he was 20 years ago. She's like, I'm not the same person I was a year ago. Right. But that space of, I think a part of us that's naturally trying to protect ourselves, that doesn't want to feel wounded, that doesn't want to open ourselves up to the harm, the pain, the judgment, the whatever arises from those relationships. And then, like you said, the awareness of like, oh, but here, present day, this is not how I want to be, right? I don't want to be triggered by all of this stuff. And sometimes we just can't help it.
Yeah, I couldn't help it.
Yeah.
It's like, it was like my spirit was saying, it was almost in a weird way the opposite. My spirit was like, say what you need to say. And then, but my logic was like, you need to shut your mouth right now. That's such an interest, trauma of any kind has so many layers. And I do feel like, I don't know, what's your opinion on the use of the word?
Trauma?
Yeah, because like to me, it indicates like something of significance.
Yeah.
And yet there are things that are so insignificant in my life that still feel like they still have significance.
Yeah.
In their impact on me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that I'm mindful that in today's day and age, that word already comes with lots of preconceived notions and expectations. You also know this about me, that I, as a psychologist, my philosophy is that all life experiences in our past mold who we become, how we see the world. And obviously, the more significant those incidents or those critical events were, the bigger the ripple it's going to set in motion. So obviously traumas are significant. Yeah. Because we want to downplay them or minimize them, that doesn't equate to whether they had impact or not. And one of the things I find in psychotherapy is that often people will come and say, oh no, I'm over that, or that's not that big of a deal, or age old, I had a great childhood. But when you investigate a little further, like dad was never around, mom was drinking your whole child, whatever the thing is, right? Like no judgment, but those are very critical things for the upbringing of a young child. Yeah, I think I always want to sort of check in with the person in terms of like what is their definition of that. It's not my definition.
Yeah, I love that.
But to me, traumas, I believe that even the subtlest of things shift the belief systems that we carry later on. But yeah, those traumas shift those things in a much, much bigger way.
I'm curious from a spiritual standpoint, at this place in your life, Do you have an opinion or a belief of what the purpose of any trauma is in this life?
From a spiritual lens, to me, it's all simply teachings and lessons. From a spiritual lens, all of it was needed, all of it was perfect. And I think I can find the place within myself which recognizes my soul chose it before even coming here. From a human lens, I hate it. I get lost in it. I still fight with it. I can feel shame around it, resent, anger, all the things.
Yeah, I feel like that's totally the dance that I do also. Like from a spiritual standpoint, like I can see, obviously I was raised with the notion of karma and that has evolved in my own personal belief system, but I can see how um there could be this plan or structure for the soul's growth that um that yeah, that we must experience things to grow our soul, and they come in all different ways, you know, traditionally good and traditionally bad experiences that we have. And yet, yeah, the human side of me just wants to fight it all day long. Like,
Yeah.
and the logical side of me wants to talk myself out of the impact that it had on me. And that juxtaposition of how I feel emotionally versus how I think logically about something is just, there's a real hole there. There's a real separation for me right now. And aligning those two has been very challenging. I'm not able to do it.
Yeah, my friend, I don't think, I mean, in my experience, there's too many people that do that well. I mean, I know you and I did an episode and, sort of this idea of like the ways that we get trapped in that, like the getting trapped is a part of that journey as well. I remember this moment about 6 years ago where I think I was just in a hard place and, probably just feeling a bit overwhelmed with life or depressed or whatever was going on at that time. And although I don't do this any longer, I think in that space, it was sort of this turning to God and like, why me? Like, why do I have to endure so much suffering? Like, what did I do to deserve this? Like, I'm such a kind human being. Like, what? Like, please, somebody, somewhere, something, explain to me this suffering. And then sort of like almost immediately after reflecting on my work with others who are in their own suffering. And I get really emotional every time I think about this because I recognize that when I sit in a room with somebody and they share the profoundness of their pain and suffering, and I say to them, like, I get it. Like, I really get it. Like, when you tell me you're at the end of your rope and you don't see a way out and you just wish it was all over, I can look at you straight in the eyes and be like, yeah, I know what that feels like. And so, Ram Dass talks about this a lot, that suffering is grace. And so from those moments, I recognize that like who I am in the world and how I get to show up for people, like maybe my journey needed to show me those deep levels of pain, exhaustion, depression, anxiety, fear, shame, guilt, because I can see, my friend, I can see the ways that I can often set somebody free from their own pain just by being with them in that space and being like, I see you.
Learning how to embrace the suffering into your being and allow that you are part of humanity, and humanity involves greed and fear and agitation as well as beauty and hope and all that stuff, and terrorism and the possibility of death, and to live with all that in the present and look right at it as a human being, embrace it, and then find within all that the joy of just the beauty of the manifestation on earth. That stretching of a human being, then we're coming into our full humanity. Then we're embracing our divinity as well as our humanity.
I mean, I think being seen and heard is I feel like we don't get it. I think if I sat down and said, who truly sees and hears me, I don't know that I could name one person. And I think that that's really hard in this world of 8 billion people, that might be true for me. Um, and also our ability to empathize, and that string of suffering is actually consistent in all of us, and that I feel like we don't use it enough, because there is so much shame and guilt and everything that comes with it. I almost want to sit down with somebody new and say, tell me all of the worst things that have happened to you,
Right.
so we can really connect on a deep level, because chances are I felt a lot of the same things that you felt.
And, to your point, it's incredible how just having just like the briefest moment of validation can like bring relief. So when we jumped on this call, like I've been having a few really hard days emotionally. And we jumped on the call and you're just like, oh, I've been feeling like things have been hard. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not alone. Ah, I can breathe for a second.
Yes, I'm not weird anymore. There's somebody else who feels that way. Because I do
Yeah.
sometimes I feel like I'm an alien walking around,
Yeah.
because there's this, oh, you have this amazing life, these amazing children, these amazing
Right.
parents, you have these, and it's like, yeah, I do. And the word has been really prominent for me the last several weeks, especially in my work with my therapist, that this can be true and this can be true.
Mm.
And for them both to be true, it does not work in my mind,
Right.
but it feels correct. It feels that, yes, all of these things can be true about your life, and I can also be struggling and suffering. And both can be true, and both are okay, and both are just my experience.
I think one of the things that I've been reflecting on a lot lately is sort of where my life's journey has taken me, in that, right, I used to feel alone in this space often because I didn't have access to other people or their stories to help me feel that I wasn't crazy. But since becoming a therapist, I have access to those people all of the time. What happened for a while there was like, well, these are all people that are hurting too. So it makes sense, right? Like that's why they're here, because they're hurting too. But the rest of the world, right? But it turns out that a lot of my work is with, I guess people that we would probably say have it together, like high achievers, people, like CEOs and athletes and, people that are just like crushing it in the world, but their story is no different, right? Like I can be in any room of people talking about whatever, and we arrive at like, because me, it's like we're going to take our mask off, we're going to get raw, and we'll start to talk about the struggle, and you give people permission to do that, and you lead with a little vulnerability, and eventually everyone in the room is opening up and sharing like what their current struggle or past struggle has been. So I think you're right. I think it's all of us.
Yeah, I think it's all of us, and that makes me so curious to wonder then, from a spiritual standpoint, does the soul seek this out? Soul seek like the hardest path to get it over with, or like,
Right.
I don't want to come back to this life, please. Like, let's get all our lessons out of the way. I don't. Yeah, it's so interesting to me from a spiritual standpoint. So
Yeah. Well, in some Buddhist philosophies, the whole reason we come to this realm, if you will, to this experience as humans, is because the things we have to work through are only on this plane. The attachment, the pain that like other realms don't have that. We're free of that in other realms. So, like, yes, that's why everyone here on Earth in this human experience has that, because that's what we come here to work through. So this idea of like trying to experience heaven on earth, like, no, that's not here. We came here to struggle through some of these deeper things for our spiritual evolution.
then it feels like such a loss to not share that more often, to not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well said.
I feel like we totally miss, so many opportunities then to grow and to not feel alone.
Yeah. And, I think some of that goes back to what you were mentioning earlier about the traumas and the programming, that in some ways sort of further or, more deeply entrench the shame around who we are and the fear of showing that to anyone.
Yeah. Yeah, they really become taboo topics and
Yeah.
things that nobody talks about. And there's so much shame and guilt around these things that, yeah, I think we really do ourselves a disservice as a collective humanity to not sit with each other in those spaces and share that. I feel like it's not a commiseration. I don't even know if that's a word. It's not to commiserate in woe is me and all and
Yeah.
those things. It's more to really, for me, I see it more as really an opportunity to connect on a deeper level. And probably, I think if I did it more, I would get a better understanding of human suffering and see more, maybe see more patterns or have them reflected back to me that that's what these are. They're lots and lots of patterns.
Yeah. What are some of the blocks for you there? I mean, we've talked about patterns and sort of like cultural norms and things of that nature, but what's your sense of what blocks you from, going into those spaces or even searching them out?
Yeah, I think it probably depends on where I'm at. I think some of it's energetically, I just don't have the energy to do it. Carrying, I feel like, well, and that's the irony, right? Like carrying your own suffering can be so heavy, and it can feel when you sit with somebody to collectively carry each other's that it would feel heavier, but sometimes I come out of that feeling lighter. So, but I think that's usually one of the reasons. I think the other is also that, yeah, I dismiss my levels of trauma a lot. I had a good childhood.
Mm.
That's my story. I'm sticking to it. What happened to me is nothing compared to what happened to you. I mean, and the circles that I'm in are, men and women who went to war, men and women who have lost, people to suicide and depression because of the experiences that they've had, childhood sexual abuse and rape and just these very heavily traumatic, it seems like for me to then sit with somebody and say and share my trauma seems completely insignificant. Um, and yet it is not. So finding my way through that is I find myself to my comfort zone, I think, is empathy. So it's very easy for me to fall into that empathetic and listening role and not come out and take the lead and talk a lot.
What I find fascinating is that if you were to sit with any of the individuals that you just described, the person who experienced rape or combat or something, they also do the same thing around minimizing their trauma. This
Isn't
was
that crazy?
this was really curious to me when I got into this field because, right, so, I'll just use some hypotheticals, right? But the kid that, grew up with a, father that drank a lot was like, yeah, but, other people had it worse. And I was like, okay, I can buy that. And then the next person would come in and be like, yeah, I was, raped when I was, 13, but other people have it worse. And I'd be like, okay, like I'm having a harder time buying that. But and the next person would come in and be like, I was molested by my grandfather from the age of 5 to the time I was 10. But like, it wasn't that bad like other people. And I'm like, wait a second, there's something up here. Because no matter what the person's trauma was, the instinct was to minimize it. The theory I developed is that we are so often asked as children to abandon our feelings, how we feel about something, our experience of something, in the service of like, you're okay, or in the service of what the adults think, or in the service of what society thinks. Like, we're so indoctrinated from a very early age that, like, what you're feeling, thinking, that doesn't matter. It's not in line with how we want you to feel. And so I think we just like learn to do that to ourselves because it doesn't matter how bad the trauma is, for how many years they experienced it. You talk to that person and they will in some way minimize it.
To talk more about that concept of when we're children that we're talked out of the way we feel.
Yeah. So here's a perfect example. Recently, I was away from home for 4 or 5 days traveling, and so when I got back home, my son, he's at an age where he really loves his and appreciates daddy time, right? And daddy's like, we're gonna play. And so I came home and he was so excited, Sapna. He was just like over the moon, like, daddy's home, let's play, daddy, let's play. And I said, okay, buddy, we're gonna play, but we're gonna go out to dinner first. So let's get dressed. And then when we get back home after dinner, we're going out for dinner, we'll play. And he's like, all right, awesome. Runs over to go put on his shoes. And I go back out to my car to get my luggage and bring it into the house. When he sees me leave through the door, he gets up and frantically starts screaming, "Daddy, wait me, Daddy." So I come back inside and I'm like, Jonah, it's okay. Like, daddy's not leaving. Like, everything's okay. We're going to play, like we're going to dinner. Don't worry about it. Suddenly he stops and he looks at me. He goes, "I'm sorry, Daddy." Now here's this 2.5-year-old. He's not really processing memories, or maybe he is, or starting about to, right? But like, he experiences in this moment that Daddy's disappointed with him. And he apologizes to me. Again, I want to reiterate, he's 2.5 years old. Right in that moment, because Christina was in the kitchen, she comes over and she says, "Jonah, it's okay. You were upset and afraid that Daddy was going to leave again. It's totally okay to be upset." And that moment, it clicks for me. I get down on his level. It's like, "Buddy, I'm so sorry. Like, I should have told you that I was just going outside," right? But like, in this moment, he's experiencing fear. In his world, Daddy's been gone. I missed him. We're finally back together. Oh my God, he's leaving again. No one, right? Like, no one gave me the information I needed to feel secure in this moment.
And then he's apologizing for the way he's feeling.
Right.
At 2.5.
At 2.5. And in that moment, like, I was like, oh my God. I was like, no. And again, he probably won't have a memory of this, but it felt important for me to say in that moment, "Jonah, it's absolutely okay for you to feel whatever you're feeling, regardless of what mommy and daddy need you to feel. You're entitled to that." And so what I recognized later is like, oh, my wife and I in that moment were helping my son develop a strong sense of self, a strong sense of owning what we're feeling, thinking, and doing. What that transfers to later in life is being able to set good boundaries, being able to say no, being able to, like, oh, I can own my aspect of this, but that sounds like, you need to own your part of it too. What most of us grew up experiencing was a strong sense of other. In my house is, be quiet because you're going to piss off your dad. Don't talk like that because you're going to upset mom. And, I think in this conversation, it's important that, to acknowledge that we grew up in conversations where families first, collectivistic culture, that's important, right? There are times where Jonah has to recognize that there are needs outside of his that might be more important. But I think the key here is the removal of the shame and the guilt. A lot of us, I know in Hispanic cultures, we get taught through guilt and shame, and we lose ourselves, right? Like that's where we become people pleasers. That's where we have really hard time saying no because we feel guilty or shameful that we might upset somebody, upset the apple cart. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that was a lot of the way I was raised too. And it wasn't like, stare you in the face, but I do think it was a lot about, for me, the way, oh, this is so interesting, the way the family was represented to others. So our actions were representative of the family, and that is what reflected outward. And I say it's so interesting because just 2 weekends ago, we went to a wedding up north, and I told my children, when you are here, you represent your grandparents. They're not here, but the way you behave represents. That's so interesting. Holy moly. Yeah, and we do such a disservice to our children to not let them have their own identity and to just be the way they are, molding them to change the way that they are, the way that they feel, the way that they think, behave.
Well, and in this instance, right, going back to the point you made earlier of why potentially this is one of the reasons that when we're going through something challenging, when we're feeling that life is hard, like we don't give ourselves the space to honor that. right? It needs to be different. It needs to look different. I need to suck it up. I need to, right? Like, this is not okay. This version of me is not okay. I must be broken. What's wrong with me? Yeah, it's just like everything, so many of the pieces of our environment early on fed that message to us in such a powerful way.
Yeah. And I see it reflected in the way that I parent now because my children are 12 and now it comes with this, and there are two parents in a relationship. So finding that balance between the way that you parent and making sure that it's consistent is challenging. And, somebody can say, well, they're 12 now, so they should be able to do chores and they should be able to sit quietly and they should be able to behave this way and they should be able to do this and they should not be loud. And I'm like, yes, you're right. I'm like, yes, I guess those things are all right. Like my children are now a reflection of me and they need to be able to do all of those things. And yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt it's a delicate balance, right? I mean, I don't want a savage running around the house and growing up, just doing whatever he wants either.
Yeah. And yet, there are these stages where you really want kids to be kids because we all grow up so fast. We all, get into the space of being an adult where, I wish every day, I wish I could just go back to being a kid.
Thank you for saying that because I made this reflection a couple times this week, and pardon how adamant I feel about what I'm gonna say, but like I experience people like the ways that they show up in relationships, the way that they protest, the way that they get angry, the way that they fuss, and it's just like a child. Right. So I work a lot with couples and I just see like the antics that they go to and they're so childlike. And for me, it feels like adults are just children walking around, right, with like these bigger bodies physically, outwardly, but on the inside, we're just children. We just want to connect. We just want to be understood. We just want to be validated. We just want to understand. I do think most of us grow up much faster than we need to. And so emotionally, a lot of us don't get to catch up, right? So the 54-year-old man whose wife says, I don't like your shirt and acts like a complete child, right? Or all of the ways that we protest and act. I mean, if we're honest with ourselves, I mean, I do it, right? I mean, just yesterday, I get home and Christina asked me, how my day was. And I was like, oh, finally, like I can share with somebody, how my day was. Cause I've been bottling this up all day. And right in that moment, Jonah starts to do something and her attention completely shifts, right? And just like the amount of rejection that I felt in that moment, oh my God. And so, I mean, I've done enough work on myself where in that moment, I saw the emotion come up. I recognized it. I was like, oh, this is, you often felt rejected by your parents. So this is just semblance of that. I'm glad that she's giving attention to my son because he was doing something dangerous and not to me. And in this moment, I'm feeling like I want to storm out of the room and like give her the silent treatment for the next 2 hours and not tell her why, It's crazy.
That's so amazing because yes, I had this huge experience of rejection this week. And yeah, I could observe it, but yeah, it felt like, oh, you're being a child.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of my self-talk was, oh, you're being a child. Like, why are you behaving this way? Why do you want to do these things? Oh, I love that. Yes, it's so validating. I do think that we have all grown up too fast. Yeah, that feels very true when I say it out loud.
Mm-hmm.
That, there was this missing part of childhood of being a child. And I had it, but, not for long enough. And that does feel like at this stage in my life, a little bit of what I crave again is that freedom, that ability to rediscover who I really am and to feel how I feel and not be told to feel differently.
I do think we can get back there. I mean, I think it's hard to because, right, like in that moment, if I can share that with my wife that I was feeling rejected, like, right, everything that I just described now, if I can share that in that moment, like I know she can meet me in that place and we can work through that, right? But she feels like a safe person for me to do that. So if we don't have that safe person in our lives, that might be harder to do, because that feels very vulnerable. That feels very raw. But I also think that we can lead the way in those relationships, like to be more courageous, to step into that vulnerability that sometimes feels hard and scary, and own our feelings, like just fully own it. And like, this is what I'm feeling and this is what I'm experiencing, without that need for validation from other. Because I think or the way I've experienced it, it's an invitation for the other person to step into that space too and be like, and this is what I'm experiencing. And this is what it feels like for me. And now we can really get somewhere, right? Because now, like, all the cards are on the table. So are the emotions.
And the and word keeps coming up, that what I am saying is true and what you are saying is true.
Yes.
And this is our collective experience.
I often have, I heard this many years ago and it just deeply, deeply resonates, but it's the responsibility of the most conscious person in any relationship to lead that relationship.
But basically, when parents ask, what can I do to help my child learn this earlier, to be more open, to be more spiritual, etc. And my belief and understanding is the only thing you can do is to let go of yourself.
Yes.
In other words, is your child better off with Sage as a mother or God?
Yes.
Okay? As you get out of the way,
Yes.
what's left is the purest, most beautiful thing in the world. And she will learn from that and she will be nurtured by that.
Yes.
And so that's the answer, right?
Beautiful.
And most people that I share that with are like, oh, yeah, that seems totally rational and true. But, and usually I find that the but is a protest. Like, why should I have to do that? I already do all the work. Essentially, what that is like, anger or resent or whatever that probably could benefit from being looked at and worked through. Right? We're like, no, I don't want to do that extra work for other people. And what my experience, my friend, has been in life is that when I get past whatever that ego or pride or whatever's stopping me in that space from doing that, and I do take on that responsibility, I become the vehicle that shifts that relationship in such a powerful. I saw it with my father before he passed. I see it with my mother, my brother, my sister, my partner, friends. Because when I can let go of whatever needs, pride, ego, expectations that I need to have about how I need you to be in order for our relationship to, when I can let go of all of that, the only thing that's sort of there remaining is compassion and love. And if every time you meet me for an interaction, there's just compassion and love, then you're disarmed of all the things that you feel you need to go into to navigate this relationship. All easier said than done, I understand.
Well, that was going to be my comment.
Yeah.
You can, people listening can't see it, but when you were talking about the group of people who say, but I don't want to do all that extra work, I was raising both of my hands because I'm exhausted all the time. And why is this my responsibility? And why do I need to be the adult? And honestly, I'm gonna throw a temper tantrum at the child that I want to be,
right,
and say, I don't want any of this responsibility. Somebody else do it. And that is true. And it is true that, yeah, I totally align with the idea that it is the responsibility of the conscious to lead the relationships and to do the work, because it does require a lot of work in relationships to set aside all of those things, to work through what we've been through, to find our place of I don't know if balance is the right word, but to find our center and to lead with it always through love and compassion. And definitely easier said than done, but a good goal to have.
Yeah. Yeah. A beautiful goal to have. I mean, what it affords me is the opportunity to keep looking inward. Where am I still holding on to, a need to be right, a need for validation, a need to be seen, a need, and great. If that's there, how can I soften? How can I work around that? How can I let some of that go?
Yeah, they're all of the experiences are, as Singer says, just awareness of where the thorns are that that can be removed, and so then our energy flows a little easier. That is a very beautiful space to be in.
May your thorns continue to be removed.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
There was a friend of mine, her name was Portia Nelson. Portia passed away a few years back. She lived up in Seattle. And she was at a seminar, and they asked her to, and they asked everyone to write on a 5x7 sheet of paper or card the 5 chapters of their life. They only wanted to give them 5x7 cards because they didn't want them to get too wordy. And Portia Nelson sat down and wrote these words about the 5 chapters of her life. And I thought I would share them here with you. They're so beautiful. She said, chapter 1 of my life. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I'm helpless. It isn't my fault. And it takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place. It isn't my fault. And it still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open. I know where I am. It's my own fault. And I get out immediately. Chapter 4 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5 of my life. I walk down another street.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Podcast, the Human Experience Podcast. We're so grateful to have shared this time with you.
As we continue recording new episodes, we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts, questions, or topics you'd like us to explore, and tell us about your own spiritual journey. We want to connect with you.
Give us a call at 800-791-3884 and leave us a voicemail. You might just be featured on a future episode of The Podcast.
Thank you for being part of our community. Until next time, keep walking your path with peace, love, and purpose.